Hey everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or wherever you are. Welcome to another episode of The Space in Between, the podcast about life stories, really. It's 2022. It's my first podcast in 2022. 2020 and 2021, that's a lot of 20s, disappeared in a blur for me. Let me know how it was for you. You can reach me at, any channel, really. LinkedIn, Twitter, find me. Send me a message. I'd like to hear from you. This podcast is brought to you by Blue Sky Republic. Today, I'm going to talk to Alwin, who is the author of a wonderful book, Captains of Leadership, which is really all about leadership, facilitative leadership, servant leadership, a new kind of leadership for a new world. It's very powerful. He has some very, very powerful things to say about this as well. You can find his book and the training that he offers at his website called captainsofleadership.com. I'm sure you'll enjoy my interview with Alwin about his very personal book, really. Lots of deeply personal stories there, which makes it powerful and entertaining. And I've known Alwin for a very long time. I've always really respected his style of facilitation, his style of leadership, and his making it sort of the connection between how to be present and how to create a safe space, and et cetera, with a very thorough scientific way of thinking. Anyway, enjoy.
I've written this book, and it's I think a bit over 200 pages, and that surprisingly only took a couple of months. But if you ask me to write a bio, I've been trying to do that for maybe 5 years now, and I'm just not able to write 5 lines about myself. So I think it's the hardest thing ever. Who are you? So because you've got so many identities in life, right? You've got your family identity. Who are you as a father? Who are you as a professional? Who are you as a friend? Who are you as a colleague? So it's a tough one. So I'll just stick to the professional one for now, maybe. So who am I? I think I started out being a marketeer, trying to create nice stories for people, but then in a commercial environment. And then after a while, I noticed that I felt I had to make stories. Working in companies, I had to make stories to make things look good, that I didn't always agree with that they were that good or they could be a lot better. And at that point, with that realization, I started looking for things, ways of doing things, ways of thinking, ways of collaboration, where I could actually make an impact on changing services, products, changing the value, instead of just having to talk about it, having to sell it or marketeer it. So I think at the beginning of my professional life, I was a marketeer, and it evolved into someone who is a bit more critical of delivering value to people, and if there are stories created, which I love to do, I think I'm a storyteller, or at least a growing storyteller. Then those stories should be genuine, and they should actually convey real value, and should really mean something, and have integrity. Yeah. So if I think, who am I? I think it's maybe a growing storyteller. Can I say it like that?
Yeah, but it's better than a marketeer, to
Yes.
be honest. Because I was wondering, when you say I started out as a marketer, can you actually say that I am a marketeer? I mean, is that a thing you can be?
You're right. And that's the thing, I struggle with that, explaining who you are. And if I stick to the professional part, it already feels so limiting. And you start talking about things like roles and titles, and that doesn't really
But
mean
why would you stick to
anything.
that? Why would you stick to that?
Exactly, because you never are one role or one title, right? We're human beings, and we're all kinds of stuff in our lives. So yeah.
Yeah, well, so I think that if you can look at it in two ways. Obviously, if you answer that question as a professional, and the person who is asking the question wants your services, and they want to know what services you can offer them, you can say, I'm a marketeer,
Yes.
and then that person is looking for marketing, whatever services. Okay, then you can say, well, I'm the person. And then maybe when you say, I am a growing storyteller,
Yeah.
I want, then they'll go like, okay,
Exactly. Yeah.
okay,
So why should I
maybe.
hire you?
Why should I hire you? But maybe there's an interesting moment there where maybe that's sort of in a nutshell your path, where you say, I actually want to be able to say I'm a storyteller, and that
Yeah.
people say, then I really want to work with you, or I want to talk to you because I need a storyteller.
Exactly. Exactly. You put it in such a clear and nice way. And I think the reason why I try to explain myself in that way is because professionally, I identify myself most with that tipping point where I noticed that storytelling is about, or it's only interesting if it's real stories, if there are real emotions behind it, if it's not, how you say that, putting lipstick on a pig. Is that how you say the expression? Like
Yeah.
if you're not trying to make something sound good, and that's what it's really about. It's about the growth behind it and understanding what value is for somebody. I think in anything you do in your professional life. So. Um, if you ask me, who am I think I'm somebody who was on that growth path from starting out very young as what I think I should do marketing into realizing, hey, I want to enrich people's lives with stories, but I want to really touch people with those stories. I want them to be real. Yeah.
That's really nice. Actually, listening to you now, I it's kind of funny because I was reading your book, and this is actually that's your journey in the book as well. I could see like
Yeah.
every now listening to you, I'm starting to realize, oh yeah, that's sort of what you're trying to tell, or you're not trying to tell, you're telling people in the book. It's about these. I like this idea where you go into a moment is not just a moment, and everything you kind of do is with an extra layer of emotional connection to the things you
Exactly.
do, to the people that are around you, and your kind of search. And I kind of want to talk about, before we go into that
Hmm.
specifically, I'm kind of interested in where that started, because why? So what's different? You started out as a marketeer. You thought, I'm doing things I don't want to do, or
Hmm.
I'm kind of, these are not the story I want to tell. You kind of saw, or you felt that you wanted to play a different part. There
Yeah.
was some kind of tension there.
Yeah.
Why? Because
Yeah.
your colleagues probably were like, "Wow, that's wrong. This is awesome." What's your problem, or not, or they just went ahead. Not everyone has
Yeah.
that kind of drive or feels that tension. What happened? What happened?
Well, I wonder if I explain my story, whether people relate to it or whether it's just some strange thing that I experienced. But it actually started pretty early with well, the feeling that I, it's not like a misfit, but I never felt really in place anywhere. Even in school, I was not the person with the best grades, and I was supposed to get good grades because then I'm a proper student, and then I'm accepted also by the teachers or parents or any older people in the community. And then as you progress in your career as a student, if you might call it like that, and you go to university, then you have to make a choice. What will you be? What will you study? And that will define how successful you are and how important you are, how smart you are in society. And that was already a really hard thing for me. Like, how can I decide what I want to do or who I want? Is this who I'm then going to be? Because that's a tough decision. I don't know who I want to be. So I started out in bioengineering, which interested me a lot. But then I noticed that that wasn't perfectly what I want to be. I didn't feel at the right spot again with the people around me, and everybody was doing so well except for me. So then I changed and I did economics, and I thought, well, now I'm just gonna push through it because I can't just keep messing up stuff. So I studied a bit more, and then at one point I could choose to become an engineer in economics, which is a bit of a more difficult direction. And I decided to do that because people told me, if you get that degree, well, then you're gonna make it in life. That's like a ticket to success, because it was also related to uh, uh, um, to IT, and that was a big thing back then. So there was going to be a lot of jobs in IT. So I thought, that's what I'm going to do. And then I got the degree, I graduated, and then suddenly, for some reason, I graduated in a year where there was where there were really not a lot of jobs available, and people told me, "Hey, your degree, it's okay. We know that you graduated, so you're smart, but you don't know anything, so it doesn't mean anything." So at that point, I was like, "Well, what do you mean? I decided to really study hard and do the hardest thing ever, and now you're telling me it doesn't mean anything, but I'm identifying with this. Now it means nothing. So who am I?" So then I started working in a marketing company, and they had me do interviews by telephone every day. And after 2 weeks, I was done with it. And they had me do it until 9, 10 p.m. in the evening. And I even had to close the office. It was a small marketing firm. And they paid me nothing. So it was like part of the starting phase. So then I quit that, and I was really lost. And but what is this now? What I studied for? Where is this going? Well, to make a long story short, that feeling just continued for a long time. It continued for a long time where I felt like I had to identify with a promotion, a title, a role in a company, and in corporate as well. I would only be important if I would make it to.
Where did but where did that come from? I mean, it's curious because I mean, is it something that you felt that could you kind of touch on that a little bit where you said, well, because people, you were going to be more accepted by the others, the other people, and but also your parents, were they? I mean, what did your
Well,
parents?
I had lovely parents, so definitely all my feelings about being maybe sometimes not in the right place or struggling or so. I don't want to blame my parents at all. They did a great job, but I have to say, well, my father was a professor, and
Mhm,
he obviously wanted to see good grades, and he thought
mhm.
that it was important to make it in life, having good grades and doing a really good, study, or getting a good graduate in a good direction. And my mom was just very caring. I felt that it's probably it might my father might have had a bit of influence on it, but it's not that. It's a society. Even
Mhm.
already in primary school, the ones that have really good grades compared to the ones that have not as good grades, they already get the feeling that they're separate a little bit,
Mhm.
and that even becomes worse throughout your study.
So where did you go to school?
So
Your the primary school. Where was
the
what was your
yeah,
first school experience?
primary school, first school was not too far from where we lived in Belgium, and in Hasselt is where it's called, and it was quite an old school primary school. So it was quite strict primary school, and when you were able to write really nicely, you would actually be allowed to sit in front of the class, and
Oh
your
boy.
and your notebook where you've written in would be displayed at the front of the class to show everybody how well you're doing. And we would also have these games. If you could multiply quicker than others, then you would be able to win the game. So there's constantly this kind of competition, feeling like you need to do well in school, and if you do well,
Uh,
you'll make it.
you be in
um,
front of the class. So you've tried to sit in front of the class for a very long time.
you might say it like that, yeah. And well, I think a lot of people have experienced this kind of pressure to make something out of yourself, and that means that you naturally start identifying with degrees, grades, roles, titles, because people seem to, well, they make you feel as if you are more important if you have the title. But for
Mm.
example, you get the title of VP, suddenly people see you as the VP. They start talking to you as, the vice president. And there's a totally different dynamic just from the moment you get that title. Isn't that silly? It's not that the person changed, they just got a title, but now that person probably identifies more with the title and everybody acknowledges that. So that's a strange thing in life. And I always had some issues with that.
Well, it's maybe also because, if you are a VP or you kind of, you're a senior leader, you have some control over, other people's careers, and, you can make decisions
Exactly.
that will affect you. So that changes your relationship, with others. And yeah, it's a fascinating kind of, yeah. I'm not really sure whether we're ever going to say goodbye to that system or not, but obviously, again, connecting to your book about a kind of new way of leadership.
Yeah.
That well, we'll get to that in a moment, because I actually want to, because I'm still kind of interested in this, trying to sit in front of the class, or having this feel. Have you ever been? I'm just kind of here. Was there ever a moment that you were asked to sit in front of the class, or were you always in the back?
I'm afraid I was always in the back, but I didn't mind. The back was much more fun. You weren't that visible.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. Well, if you look at that as a metaphor, you're going to see it as it's an interesting metaphor, right? So, in the back of the classroom, you are, it's more fun. So it's better to be there. But at the same time, if you want to be successful in society, you want to be in front, or on top. Basically, if you kind of put the classroom sideways, that's where the leaders,
Sorry to interrupt you, Arden, but you make me think immediately about something, because the thing is, the ones that are in front of the class, they know what to do to get in front, and they're so focused on that they miss a lot of other stuff. They get this narrow view. And if you're in the back of the class, okay, yeah, of course, you can keep looking at the carrots, if you might say it like that you want to be in front. But on the other hand, from the back of the class, you see everyone. You see and the people in front of the class and the ones sitting in the middle. You see it happening, all of it. And I think that's a great metaphor also to, I think, to explain why I like an underdog position, because people don't expect of you to do things, and then you don't get distracted just to fulfill what people expect you to do. With an underdog position, you've got more options, and you can be surprising in any type of way that you want. So yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, it's almost like you can see the classroom as an organizational structure.
Yeah,
where the CEO is the teacher, focusing on the people who are doing really well, and really being annoyed with the people in the back of the class, but they're in the back, so you can't really, or she can't really see all of them. But the people in front of the class only see the teacher.
Yeah, and them in the
and you
back.
see the whole
You see
room.
the whole thing.
And you see it all happening.
Everything. They hear everything. They hear what's being said in the back. They hear what's being said in the front. They see everything happening. They see a lot more than the people that's in the front. Yeah.
And obviously they also know how to start bending the rules a little bit and kind of sneak out.
Streetwise.
But at the same time, you're also telling me that there was a little voice, quite a big voice in your head saying, "I have to perform too. I have to have the grades. I need to have this kind of, I have to do these studies. I need to kind of, because there's work in IT for me."
Yeah.
So I have to, go into that direction. So there was also that part, being in the back of the class, maybe happy to be there, but at the same time, having this kind of nagging kind of feeling.
Well, I also think it's because of what you see and what you don't see, because everything around you kind of pushes you in that direction, because everybody else is trying to get good grades. Everybody else is on a similar mission, maybe in their own unique way. So nobody is doing things differently. For example, saying, "Hey, I'm just gonna learn in a completely different way, and I'm not gonna care on whether I have good grades or a title or not. So it's what you see around you that makes you think that way. It's not that there's a really outspoken rule or you're pressured all the time. It's not like that. I didn't.
And the storytelling part was. Do you remember when that was sort of the first? When that came up? As a kid, were you already kind of
Yeah.
Thinking about stories, or was that something that you
Yeah,
connected to?
well, as a lot of kids do, I loved movies. I loved movies a lot more than homework. I loved books as well. I did already at a young age write stuff, silly stuff. It's more trying to be humoristic and then have my family read it and hopefully they would like it. And I already then had the joy of people reading stuff you write and having their feedback on it. So that happened pretty early. And I always felt I wanted to write something, but I wanted to make sure I had a message. I didn't want to write something just for the sake of writing it. I only wanted to write something if I felt that I really believe in this, and that's what I want to bring into the world. So eventually that happened, and I'm over 40 now, so it took quite a while. But I must say that urge to write or to bring stories in the world, that was already there pretty young age. Yeah.
And did you? So after, so when you started studying, and also in like middle school, was your kind of how was you? I mean, you told me that as a student, you were not the best. You were not the
Yeah.
top student. You didn't get all the grades that you maybe wanted to, but still. But did you work really hard for to achieve these things, or was it tough?
Well,
And how was that experience
well,
for you?
well, not really. I didn't work really hard, honestly. So I was always distracted
Yeah.
by things around me, by people, by it's stories from people, honestly. So what their lives are about. I was hanging out with friends. I was doing all kinds of other stuff. Even during my university studies, I was spending more time trying to set up stress coaching weekends for managers with a fellow student as we thought as entrepreneurs we wanted to do stuff, and we almost brought out a line of etheric oils.
Mm.
Also related to stress management, and we did all kinds of stuff. We organized events, a lot of events. So there was always other stuff to do besides.
Why stress management?
I don't know. That seemed to be a hot topic at that moment in time for us, it seemed. Maybe it's because we were stressed by our studies, but I felt like that's something that stress coaching is what managers would need. That's how we looked at managers when we were students. We thought that would be a good
It's a
idea.
funny way of, I can't remember ever thinking about managers at all at that age. So.
Well, we were studying economics, so everybody wanted to be a business leader, or a good
Right.
accountant. Or
Okay, and what happened next? So you
yeah,
finished your studies. You started working as a telemarketer. I think
yeah,
that's
you
what
might
it's
call it
called.
like that. There's
Yeah.
at least for 2 weeks, and then I quit, and then I continued entrepreneuring with that same fellow student, a friend of mine, and we created a marketing agency ourselves. And at that point in time, I was very much intrigued by the experience economy by Pine and Gilmore.
Yeah.
So I had this vision of creating a marketing agency where we would help companies, small and large, to build a very consistent and compelling customer experience from really the first touch point to after sales, which looking back at it, and I'm talking now about what is it, almost 20 years ago. So looking back at it, I think that was quite progressive thinking, because after that, journey mapping became popular and customer experience became popular. But we tried to do that back then. But in the end, our work was mostly building websites for companies. That's what we mostly did, and events. Websites and events is what we mostly did. And we did that for 5 years. And I really liked to be in that role because there was no title. There was no title, and I could be whoever I wanted, and that was lovely. But then obviously, we weren't that experienced yet. So after 5 years, I had to look for another job because our costs were higher than our revenues at one point. So yeah, then I started working for Philips Design, which was also a wonderful time, but it was my first real experience with corporate life. And although I met some amazing people, corporate is, whether you want it or not, it's hierarchical, and whether people try to not make it feel hierarchical and very open. And it was in a Dutch culture, meaning so everybody could really speak out. Still, there is hierarchy. There is somebody that
Mm.
has the last, and your title is important. Whether
Yes.
people act
Well,
as if, yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
So, and that's where I really felt, oof, okay, this is a different world again. I remember that from previously, how this feels. Somehow I need to identify with my title or who I am, and I'm only important depending on the position in this company.
And what was
Uh,
your role at Philips Design? What did you
I
do?
was a design manager, which was basically, you might say, an account manager internally, offering communication design services to Philips Lighting. Uh,
Hmm.
and that was within Philips Design, which at that point was a separate company. Um, and a wonderful, wonderful company, really amazing. And they were already doing experience flows or journey mapping way before anybody else was doing it. So I learned a lot, but also learned about corporate. Um,
Hmm.
and then the next step was still in corporate. I went to, I think, one of the most amazing companies ever. It doesn't exist anymore. It was Starwood Hotels and Resorts. Um, and there I was a brand manager for several hotel brands for quite a long time. Um, it's an American company, or was an American company, now bought by Marriott, but also corporate life. Although I met some of the most amazing leaders I've ever met, there were also a lot of people that were completely into that, that flow of climbing the ladder, have to make sure you get that promotion, trying to increase the importance within the company by being acknowledged, and yeah, that's
So when you look at leadership in your own kind of leadership, but also, I guess, I mean, if I listen to you now, it kind of already started as a student thinking about managers being stressed and they need to kind of de-stress. I think is still part of what you try to do.
yeah.
But also, Philips Design, where obviously it's probably a very different culture than at Star. Although
Yeah.
Philips also is sort of a blend between American Dutch, kind of,
Yes.
because it has
Yeah.
this weird kind of thing that I remember, working on some projects at Philips Design where there was a lot of freedom and everybody
Yes.
could speak up until the big boss
Yes.
came in, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, the big boss comes in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
god! Oh my
Yeah.
god! And then the stress. It was like this. So what do you now feel that you
Yeah.
learned there that
Yeah.
you are now kind of still applying? What are the things that you kind of realized, or if you look back at that period, and
Yeah.
also Starwood, what are the things you took from that and say, okay, that
Yeah.
I really, because you were
Well,
still a misfit a bit, all right? As
I always felt a little bit like a misfit, and I'm really happy that also people allowed me to kind of create my own environment within the company where I had my own responsibilities and had also some freedom. So I didn't always had to fit in perfectly. So I'm very grateful for having the right leaders to allow me some freedom. But what to answer your question? I learned about something in Philips and at Starwood, but learned it in a different way. At Philips Design, there was a very design driven approach, and everybody respected a lot the designers and people that are good in creating new things. And there, I saw the success of leadership allowing for design talent to just thrive and flourish, and giving them the space to explore and experiment. So I really experienced Philips in a very positive way. Although it's absolutely right what you said, but I see that in every corporate organization where people that with higher positions have the last word. So I think that's that level of control that we also experience in society. So I think that's just what society is like still, and companies are like still at this moment. But it's evolving. But that's another topic. I saw in Philips how if you allow for people to create their habitat and to have some freedom working on all these different projects, and you just nurture their creativity and give them a bit of acknowledgement and encouragement, then wonderful things happen. There were wonderful collaborations because of that. And then what I noticed in Starwood is there was this great situation where you have headquarters in the States that have the really last word. Then you have headquarters in the divisions that have almost the last word, but they had to report to the top headquarters, obviously. And then you had all the regional offices, and then you had all the hotels as well. But the hotels is where the real stuff is happening. So that's where the service is given, and that's where you really have the customer facing contact, and that's where also the magic happens of the proposition that Starwood has, the interaction with our guests. But we all at the headquarters only had to guess often what that's like. So that's why we traveled a lot, just to get a bit of a taste of what is that like actually interacting with your with the people that you're delivering a service to. And what I learned there is that if you honestly, deeply listen, if you're able to shift perspectives and give enough attention to people who are at the forefront, who are actually living the proposition, who are living delivering the service, and also the interactions with the guests or customers or patients or whatever it is, that's super valuable. That's where the biggest innovations came from. It did not come from the top. And we had so many issues with having, for example, a brand strategy developed in silo in the headquarters that was then in cascade trying to be imposed on the rest of the company. But then, at the final stop where that should be deployed is at the hotels. And then you're talking about cross-cultural across the globe. So that means that what you do in the Middle East is completely different than what you need to do somewhere else. And if you don't take that into account, it will never work. So that's what I really learned. It's about people working with people, and it's about empathy as your core source of knowledge to try and build good services. So I got that from Philips, but I got that even more from Starwood in a different way.
It's a bit, yeah. So in a way, if I listen to you, it's also a bit sad to think that a lot of companies are not doing it that way. Yeah. They are still doing it the old-fashioned. I call it old-fashioned. It's actually current. Actually, it's nothing old-fashioned. It's the way these companies operate. They will kind of have this remote leadership that pushes the kind of new things into the organization. And you're, exactly what you're describing, having the global headquarters, local headquarters. And then, it's like, there's this infighting, these struggles that are so, it's almost like a cliche that you're thinking, my God, aren't we learning anything? Mm-hmm. Can't we just go and, we know this is common sense. Yeah. And I know it has something to do with being in the back of the class. Right. And being there, it has something to do with going down to where I remember my first job was at a telco, and I was very young. I had no experience whatsoever. I was communication advisor or something like that. Never knew, I didn't really know what that meant, but I had to create communication plans. And if my first thing, what I did was I went to the people, and so the people I was working with were the people who kind of put the cables in the ground basically, and I just went to them to talk to them, and they were like, I came from headquarters. I was just very young anyway. I just bought my first suit that didn't really fit really well, but I thought I need to have a suit or something. I don't know, and I came down, to the workplaces where they were working and having their coffee and their lunch, and we talked to them, and they were amazed because I came from but they told me exactly what I needed to know, and I just didn't understand why that was so weird. I was always in the back of the class, and I'm a school dropout too. So, so I think being sort of in the back of the class gives you this other perspective that you're missing. So it's more like you feel there's something else because in other worlds, but they're not showing it to you. So you have to go down and get it. Yeah. So to your point, go travel, go to meet those people. But why are companies not doing this? Yeah. Why do they need misfits like you?
Yeah. We need misfits.
Why is it? Why aren't there smart people who are so smart, who are in the front of the class, who study really hard, who get all the grades, do also understand this? They read the same books, they see the same TED Talks and podcasts and what have you. Why are they not doing it?
Well, obviously that's $1 million question. Well, first of all, I'd like to add to that case, Arne, because the funny thing you see now is that companies are trying to change their structure to more holacratic structures, working with tribes and squads and trying to have more a fluent collaboration, let's say, where people move more fluently between silos or between departments. And then you see them also trying to become customer-centric or then suddenly people-centric or human-centric and that's high on their agenda. And then they try to implement methodologies. They try to implement design thinking and agile. And then strangely, they're so busy setting up new ways of working that they forget to just talk again with people. Because I've seen so many companies trying to organize themselves in different ways and spending so much time on these different steps in how we meet and how we innovate. And then if you ask them, well, and when was the last time you just went out and have a chat with your customer or with your patient, or just had a deep listening session with the people that you're servicing or have built a proposition for, and then that didn't really happen. Because, that's a lot of insecurity there. You can't control that stuff. Right. Anything could come out, and maybe that doesn't fit with how your operations work at that moment. So what then? You're like an oiled machine that has to keep running. You can't change everything over. So we only want to hear that much, that it still fits somewhat in what we do. Otherwise, hey, we can't turn everything around in one go. So I think there's a lot of insecurity around talking and hearing the truth, and that maybe your proposition is not that well received, or maybe they're
right. So, and you add a sort of you're adding another layer to, in my understanding, you're adding another layer to this kind of conversation where you talk about the security. You are, you have a title, and then you have, you want to implement your systems and new processes and new methodologies, and you're really busy with that. You hire people to kind of implement that, and you train people, and et cetera, et cetera. Mostly confusing the hell out of everyone, but still, you're really, you're in the tribe now. You're like, oh my, what?
Yes, another tribe.
Another voice, yeah. But I mean, I think people they mean well, but there's insecurity. But you're adding another layer to kind of this where. And I kind of want to, I don't know how to kind of start that conversation, but basically, can you explain hard hugs?
Hard hugs. Yes, that is another layer. So hard hugs is the most simple way to break through titles, images that you're trying to uphold. So hard hugs is, and it's really, really cool that you kind of bridge it to this, because hard hugs typically is getting out of your analytical thinking into your heart. And scientifically, it's already shown that there's a lot of information that comes from our heart towards our brain, and there's a lot of stuff we sense because of our heart. There are neurons in our heart area. So scientifically, our heart has a really important purpose to sense people, situations. And hard hugs just means that you get out of your head and you connect with your heart. And how, I know that sounds fluffy, but it is crazy what effect it has. It means that if you spend time with somebody to talk with them and listen to them and really understand with them, you can already create the right atmosphere and the right connection by having or projecting, let's say, a appreciative emotion to that person, an appreciative emotion for that moment with them, for the opportunity of sitting down with them, also an appreciative moment around the excitement of learning maybe something new and getting that time with that person. And that already, doing that without necessarily expressing it. So just feeling it from your heart area. And then I explain it that you could, what I do often is literally have my heart hug them, like two arms coming out of my heart area and hugging them. It's just a visualization that makes that even stronger, those appreciative feelings. But by doing that, people that enter that space together with you feel non-threatened at all anymore, and sometimes it helps them even to forget where they came from. Maybe they came out of a tough meeting or so. Suddenly they feel, you might say, a different frequency, a different vibe, a different atmosphere, and without them knowing it, it disarms them a little bit, and it helps to create a moment, an open moment. So and if you may, so if I can maybe explain just a little bit more, when we talked about having, why don't companies, why don't they evolve from that more hierarchical controlled approach, is because throughout our studies, we're very much trained in analytical thinking. It is recognized, acknowledged, applaud how fast thinker you are. A lot of CEOs are really fast thinkers. And if you are almost conditioned to become a really good analytical thinker, well, a lot of people have a hard time stepping out of analytical thinking. And analytical thinking is a little bit about structures, control, definitions, obvious associations that you make, maybe fast associative actions that you can do, but it's not necessarily being open to stuff that's not so tangible. And I think a lot of empathy can come from first out of, let's say very simple, like information from your heart in your brain instead of from your brain to your heart. So it's the other way around on that highway. And that just needs you to be very present and very conscious.
Yeah, you listen to other signals, and listen is not the right word, but there's a,
pick them up.
There's you because energy, I mean, we all know if you enter a room where there are 4 people just sitting silently, or you enter a room where there are 20 people doing kickboxing, the energy in your room is completely different.
Yes.
I mean, you can't really, and you might translate that into, but it's because I see it, but you feel it. So it's all connected. And we all know, I mean, there are, you have your heart brain and there is a gut brain. To be honest, and, there's this heart transplant that took place that this guy got his pig heart. So I'm wondering what you think about that. How is the heart hug from the pig heart?
But there you touch upon something. It's an example that's often used when heart brain is explained. There are cases where people get a heart from another person, and they also take over certain experiences that person had before they died, and they get, even in dreams, some kind of
So what's
images.
the pig heart going to do?
I don't know.
We really have to keep an eye on that case.
Yeah.
Because that might be really weird then.
That
it's
might
like,
be really weird.
This room has really weird energy. This guy's like, what's happening?
Yeah.
Animal hugs.
Animal
I
hugs.
don't know. Yeah. So anyway, I think there is something about things are all connected. So
Yes.
I mean, whatever heart you have, it is also connected to the other parts of your brain. It's not like one thing. And I also believe that you're also connected to other people. So I very much believe in synchronicity as well. So but I kind of, so I talked about this because I in a way, your book is upside down. In a way, there's again, you put yourself in the back of the class again, because you end with the thing that you actually cared most about sharing.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's like where I was looking for that, because I thought he's not talking about this. Where is his heart math? And where's the thing he was going to write about this?
Yeah.
And it's in the back of the class. It starts obviously. I mean, I think we totally agree on facilitative leadership or servant leadership or all that kind of. I totally believe in that as well, and I'd love to kind of hear your thoughts about this. But what struck me was actually thinking, why? But now I listen to you, I'm thinking, oh yeah, because also the first thing you call you talk about this are heart hugs, but you say before you introduce it, this might sound a bit fluffy. You did it now as well. And I'm thinking, why are you making excuses for that? Why you even wrote it down? Like this might sound a bit fluffy. So you're excusing yourself, like, I'm sorry, but I really believe in this. But just bear with me for a moment. You probably think this is nonsense. I just want to share it with you. Where does that insecurity come from?
Well,
or is it insecurity? I don't know. It's just how I interpret it.
Well, I wouldn't say necessarily it's insecurity. I think some things you can only properly know if you experience them, and spending too much words on them just confuses them or even creates obstacles for people just to experiment. So I'm thinking,
but isn't that the same with everything you write about in facilitation, in design thinking, and everything? Isn't everything, before you experience it? I mean, what can you really put in words that is exactly the same as the experience of it?
Well, I think there's some things that are more mainstream than others. And some things, even if it's harder to explain and you still have to experience it, more people have experienced it and can easily relate to it. If you, for example, talk about how to deal with a difficult person in a workshop, everybody has experienced that if they've done workshops, facilitated it. And it's hard to explain how to deal with it because there's so much complexity to it. It could be different kinds of personality situations, all that stuff. So it's easier to then experience it and then talk about it. But if you talk about heart hugs, I'm not sure, is it mainstream, picking things up from the heart area?
It's new. It's new, it's different. It's like, and especially in your last chapter where you start talking about breathing and sleeping, which I thought that's really cool. You need some sleep. It's important. And you're thinking, and to me, so I am a evening person, but I have kids and they go to school really early. And so I have to get up really early. So I don't get enough sleep. I know this. I read it. I'm thinking, he's right. And why did he do this? He should have said that in the first chapter. I'm just kidding. But I'm just thinking that although, yes, of course, it's more difficult and not everyone will agree. And I'm kind of a pragmatic person. I'm also thinking, I don't know about this hearth math thing or whatever. There's a little bit of that in my brain as well. My father was a scientist, and my mother totally is more the artist. So these are two voices in my head. I recognize that it's sort of it becomes a bit fluffy. So it's not bad that you said it. I was just curious, because I knew that you were kind of that drove you to this kind of new way of thinking, and that was sort of the new kind of thing that you found, and you're excited about this, and you were going to write this book. So I was kind of like, where is it?
Well,
Oh, it's in the back,
but I
which is
also,
also beautiful in a way, because it's like you add this bonus thing to it. It felt like a bonus thing. Like,
keep
okay,
the
now
best
we've
for
covered
last.
the we've covered the whole thing now.
Yeah.
And it's all really insightful and great, especially for people beginning in becoming facilitators or leaders. But then there's this thing there is like, oh, where is he
Well,
taking me now?
I was thinking, the first part are very short chapters. And I think in the first part, there's a lot of stuff that people think, but it's not necessarily outspoken. Like, for example,
Mm.
in systems thinking, can we ever control a system? I think that I kind of make the case that we can't,
Mm-hmm.
and I kind of show why. But and I think more and more people realize that, and that we have to approach it in a different way. So that first part, also in leadership, I think is very easy to digest. And then you have guide, conduct, and catalyze, which is the crux of facilitation.
Yes,
And
your
I'm
holy
thinking,
trinity,
yes,
as you call
exactly.
it. Yeah, yeah.
And well, in my mind, it's simple, but I can I can understand if you explain it, and it's a large part in the book. It can be quite cumbersome to read through it if it's the first time that you've thought about facilitation this way. So I tried to want it to reward the reader with a final part.
Or trick them
Um,
into it. You're like, this sounds all really normal. This is
exactly.
I can
Yeah.
do that. And then again, then you were like, but here now we're going into no, but no, it's just that I thought it was kind of also because I know you, and and in a way, to me, as being a Dutch person, it's a bit Belgian, really
Yeah.
like Flemish, to
I
kind of
get
say,
that. Yeah.
it's a little bit modest. It's the modesty where we as Dutch would say, we would start with that and say,
Yeah.
this is the new religion,
Yeah.
and you kind of not hiding it, but there is you feel that you kind of you're saying, I want you to kind of come with me, but yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, it might be bitten,
Yeah.
but at the same time, it does fit also with your personality, and also with your story about empathy, that you kind of put yourself in the position of the reader here.
Yeah.
And even though you totally believe in it, but you're not saying, well, fuck everyone,
Yeah.
this is what I believe in. No, you're thinking about, they're reading this. This is how they're reading it. Oh, okay. This is where I have to kind of say, you might find it a bit too difficult to digest. But bear with me, and you also start with with logical things, again, breathing, sleeping. Yeah, you'll
And
get
then
it, and then it goes deeper
yeah,
into
into some other stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
which I think is a powerful way of putting another layer in the conversation
Yeah.
that we don't hear quite often. We talk about meditation and
Yeah.
creativity more often, but you go a little further with that. But meditation is also something that has, I mean, again, it's one of those things that are kind of common,
Hmm.
that we know, like, okay, but there's obviously, you also go a little deeper with meditation. You're not just doing meditation like most of us, if we do meditation at all, just sitting down, close your eyes, trying to figure out, do we breathe?
Yeah.
Am I breathing? Am I breathing? You actually you have, like, can you tell me a little bit about how you got into meditation, and what, you using an app, and you're using
Yeah.
all kinds of measurement devices and stuff like that. First of all, where did that start? Where did your interest start in that kind of layer? Where did that start? And how did you discover that? And so, what is the story there?
Yeah. Um, Well, thanks to my dad, and I lost him last year, unfortunately. And he was an amazing person, and he was already at a very young age busy with yoga and meditation, and reading books from New Age authors like Stuart Wilde. I think he was popular in the 80s. He was already touring with Wayne Dyer, who's still popular now, I think. So, and I was lucky to then already have a library of books on all kinds of stuff that are intangible or more spiritual, or about manifestation, about manifesting, but also about yoga and meditation. So I started reading those at a young age already. When I was 14, I was reading my first book on miracles from Stuart Wilde, manifestation, also explaining, how powerful the mind is. So that triggered me at a young age. But I can't say that had so much impact for the rest of my life. It's just there was an interest, always an interest. So I kept reading. And then at one point I felt like, Alwin, you're reading all kinds of stuff, and it seems you're really good at just repeating all those theories to other people. But what is the value to that if you don't experience it properly? I tried manifesting stuff like a lot of people do, and The Secret was a big thing. When that came out, and also remember the Celestine prophecy was also a big thing a long time ago, and that also already kickstarted for a lot of people the interest in stuff like manifesting and energies and things like that. But to get back to my point, I felt like, this is not genuine if you keep reading stuff and don't really do it. And tried out yoga. And at that point, yoga didn't immediately resonate with me when I tried it out. So I then started looking more into meditation and tried it out, some things on meditation together with breathing techniques. Also, like a lot of people was back then, I'm now talking 10 years ago at least, into Tony Robbins and all the stuff that he explained. And there was a lot of breath work there as well. From Tony, it went to all kinds of people that inspired me. And in the end, I was mostly inspired by Dr. Joe Dispenza. I'm a fan of his. I like his work. And he goes quite deep into teaching people a meditation. And that really got me hooked. So at that moment in time, I felt like meditation is not just something, a little bit of an experiment. Meditation is something that I can try and keep practicing and also while doing so learn more about myself, and I can do that throughout my whole life. Like there's no end to it. You're never there. This is going to be a roller coaster, and I like adding that dimension to my life because it just teaches me more about myself. It's really putting a mirror in front of yourself, because I also explained in the book, when I first started doing meditations longer than an hour, I really struggled with what they call that monkey mind. So that voice in your head that tells you, hey, your back is aching. What are you doing? Just stop with this. Or, hey, here's your biggest fear. What do you think about that? You thought you were going to have a transcendence experience. Here, just let's look at what if your kids get into an accident. What about that? Let's think about that. I'll distract you a little bit. So, your mind starts playing tricks with you.
Yeah.
And I thought that was just, although it was horrible at times, but on the other hand, that was an amazing growth experience. Just stepping back from your own voice in your head and observing it, and just observing how it tries to get your attention and get you out of that meditative state. And then also observing after a while how that voice lowers, and how you can actually more easily get into quietness, and how unbelievably healing that is to get into a quiet space inward. So yeah, meditation started out as just something to experiment and to explore as a next step from yoga, and then it became something that I can't let go of. It's because I believe there's a lot of growth in that, and also in becoming a facilitator. And everything you do, it helps you with deep listening. It helps you to get into your creative flow. It helps you with everything. So yeah, I'm a big fan, obviously.
Yeah, but you also you use or at least and it's also in your book, which we talked about the way back, where you also have a way to measure, or at least this is how you started kind of measuring your brain activity and seeing whether it actually had an effect, right? Because that's kind of interesting that it makes it also almost tangible. Yeah, that what it exactly does. So how did you get, because is that because of all the people that you kind of you admire, or were those the people that showed you the way to all that also that those kind of tools? Or...
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, first of all, by reading new age spiritual books when I was young, it made me very critical because I don't like fluffiness. I like science behind things. And also when I meditate, when I started, I really wanted to measure brain waves and see what it did, and also how I performed, until it became a focus of performance, and then I threw it away because
Right.
that's completely contradicting meditation. So then I stopped with measuring. But how did I get to those tools? Yes, there's a lot of people that can inspire you out there, but I'm also very lucky. My father played a big role in there. My older brother is also into these things, and I got inspired by stuff that he's exploring as well. He's doing it in his own unique way. I'm doing it from my perspective, but we inspire each other. So yeah, you pick up things from people. Yeah, so
it is about. So it's interesting because it's obviously again it's common sense, but you are influenced by the people around you,
Mm-hmm.
and there's this simple logic of if you want to change yourself, you have to surround yourself with other people. Be part of different communities. If you want to be more creative, get more creative people around you. So that will change you because you will be sort of the average of the people that you are surrounded by. And I, at the same time, sort of that is true. And because you were saying this, and you talk about the people that are surrounding you and influence you, it's also being open to them. And so this is not, it wasn't about your father, but in your book, you described this moment. I think it wasn't about your father, but you described this moment of someone dying and you being there with the family.
Yeah.
And it has something to do with this moment. So this is where you go, a moment is never just a moment.
Yeah.
Because we kind of see things as, very fleeting, and it's like you're always on a train basically, and it's just everything passes by. But by having sort of moments as a sort of I don't know how to you probably talk about this better than I can, because it is about connecting to people in a different way. It is not just about we're on a maybe even on separate trains, but we pass by each other every now and then, like, oh, hello, but there's this also having this other connection to people in that moment, so you can also be influenced by them or influence them very differently than we kind of Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. A moment is never just a moment. And I think when you hear that the first time, it's like, oh, yeah, okay, that's like a cliche sentence, but it holds a lot of truth that comes from the book, because the last part is about manage yourself. And I also basically say that this is the most important part, because if you can't manage yourself, it doesn't even matter all the stuff you read before. If you can manage yourself, you will be capable to do stuff naturally. And that's the same thing with the moment is never just a moment. It starts with being able to become present, being able to, if you say it in more it's not scientific, but more biological terms, it's being able to manage your nervous system. So being able to trigger your parasympathetic nervous system, and that's a nervous system for your rest and digest state, for a lower brain waves, for a lower heart rate, lower respiratory rate, to be in that moment, to have an open focus, not feel threatened. Threatened could be a lot of things. Threatened because maybe you don't feel good enough in the presence of that person, or maybe that person has hurt you in the past, and you have an armor that protects you against more. It could be so many reasons, but being able to manage your state from a state of openness, and being able to trigger that parasympathetic nervous system, just to be so present that you can take everything in. That is when you make a moment a special moment, and you always have the choice. You always have the choice whether you want to do that or not. And I feel like a lot of people don't consciously decide to do that more, And a moment is never just a moment. There's a call out to everyone to just be more conscious of that and try to manage your state in a way where you can absorb a lot more from life, because your life will become a lot richer and you will also have a lot more empathy for your environment. And I think as a facilitator, that's crucial, because it's all about sensing your environment and getting the best out of other people. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but I because of the way you link that to a very personal moment
Yeah.
in your life, it is a yeah. So because you connect things that we started a conversation with you saying, well, I used to be a marketeer, like,
Yeah.
but you're never a marketeer. You are you, and with all the things that you've experienced, and these kind of moments can give you this powerful insight that is also part of your growth. It's not
Yeah.
just because you did this course that was in your company. It is everything
Yeah.
that you do in life that you can connect and can use as a leader, facilitator, or just as anyone really. So I think that's I thought that was really, really powerful, because it means that and we all know this,
Yeah.
but you're learning all the time, and it's okay. So I'm saying this to myself as well, because I remember being young and being at school where I was so irritated by the fact that if I would read a book that was not on the list, it wasn't considered learning
Yeah.
because that wasn't relevant. Yeah, there was a list of books I had to read for school. That's what I was supposed to read. The other things weren't part of the learning, and
Yeah.
and actually everything is learned. I learned because I played music with a band. That's where I learned a lot about creativity, with building and creating things with other people. And
Well,
we look at it such a narrow way
mhm.
often, right?
Well, I believe learning comes from slowing down. And you can't learn if you are like on a high pace, high ambitious, need to get this in my head quickly so they can apply it and I can be successful. You learn by slowing down.
How do you deal with that when in your current work?
Yeah.
Because a lot of the things that you and I do are we only have we only have a day. Teach us
Yeah.
design thinking, please. And you're go like, that's a life journey. You want
Yeah.
to do it in one day.
Well,
How do you deal with that?
Well, let
That
me nuance slowing down, because time is a tricky thing and a super interesting thing, because you could have an hour and you can experience that hour as if it flew by like crazy during the hour. But when you look back on the hour, it felt like it was a lifetime because so much got done. Or you have an hour that while you're in the hour, it's like it's super slow. And when you look back at it, it feels like it went by very quickly. So, and that has to do with your dopamine and serotonin levels, depending on what happens during that hour. So time is a tricky thing. And when I'm saying slowing down, I'm saying be aware of becoming in the moment, being aware of getting into a more restful state. And that is slowing down. It's still an hour. It's
yeah,
not, I'm saying take 5 hours to do the same thing. I'm saying do it much more consciously and much more with an open mind and an open heart. And then you'll see that you learn more from that moment. Your memory works better, and you're much more attentive to a lot of other information, and not the only thing you're super focused on if you're on a high alert state. So that's what I mean with slowing down. It's the way you
exactly.
deal
Yeah,
with that moment.
there was
Yeah.
a watch, I didn't know, years ago. I didn't buy it or anything, but I liked the concept. It wasn't really a watch. It was basically it looked like a watch, but it just gave you a little bit of a buzz every 5 minutes. That's all it did.
Yeah.
And the idea was that 5 minutes is not your moment is not never just a moment. 5 minutes is never just 5 minutes. Some
Yeah.
5 minutes take a long time. If you're waiting for water to boil,
Yes.
and you're just waiting there for it to boil, it takes a long time,
Yeah.
right? It takes such a long time.
But then,
yeah,
if we hook back into that last part on sleeping and breathing, well, that plays a crucial role. These are super simple techniques. If you haven't slept enough, for example, if you haven't slept, if you didn't have enough REM sleep, it will be harder for you to regulate your emotions. If it's harder to regulate your emotions, you'll get ticked off more easily. If you get ticked off more easily, you get in a more your sympathetic nervous system gets triggered. You get in a more narrow focus, and you'll have a feeling that there's too much things happening at the same time, and you may feel rushed, or you may feel agitated, and you don't register half of the information or the stuff that's happening at that moment in time. But if you sleep enough, if you're well slept, that's another thing. You can slow down more easily. And again, with slow down, I mean becoming present in that moment and really take it in. Breath work. Doing breath work, like simple long breaths, long in, long out, will get you in that moment. So there are techniques to slow down, again, to take more in that moment, in that same moment of time. Yeah, to be more present. Yeah.
Awesome. One question about your book is it's called Captains of Leadership.
Yes.
Why isn't it called Captains of Facilitation?
Yeah. I've been making the strong statement, and that's also because of that past in corporate and the feeling as a misfit. I've been making the strong statement that facilitation is pure leadership, and to me it is because there's no title involved necessarily. Anybody could be a facilitator in any moment that people share in co-creation. So it's open for everybody, and because you're completely servicing the people, you're trying to get the best out of them in that moment. You're trying to create this group flow, blending them together as a beautiful organism that becomes super creative. That makes you a real leader. That's what leaders do. They get the best out of other people, and they don't do it for their wage or their fancy car or their title. As a facilitator, you just do it with genuinely good intent to get the best out of that moment. That for me is pure leadership, and that's why I call it Captains of Leadership, because you're an ambassador of leadership if you facilitate.
Yeah, well, I think it's a wonderful book, and it gives, I mean, it's both very practical tips and it's very, like, okay, yeah, you can actually use it. And also going a little deeper, it's different than, so I have dyslexia, so I always have a problem reading books. So business books usually give you sort of, the core of what they're trying to say in the first couple of chapters, and then they start repeating things. So I read half of the books most of the time, right? But in your case, it would be like, then you would have missed this whole thing. So there's actually this bonus thing there, which is fascinating. So it's very different in that sense. So anyway, I like that. And I knew it was going to be there somewhere. So I was like, where is it? Where is that thing?
I knew you were going to read it, Arne, and I put it in the end just to make sure you read through everything.
Yeah, damn it. No, but that's really cool. So what's next for you? What are next? What are your dreams, or what are you planning, or what's next?
Well, I really believe in that message that facilitation should be looked at in a different way, that it's a form of leadership. I also believe in, what companies are searching for when they look for more holacratic structures or implementing design thinking or agile or lean startup or lean. I think what they actually need is good facilitators in their company, because it's not dependent on a methodology, it's dependent on how much somebody could get out of a group of people and knowing then what to do with that group of people. So I honestly think I have to, together with a lot of people that talk about facilitation, but I have to get the word out even more. I think it's part of our transformation these days when companies are transforming, that they acknowledge the value of facilitation. So concretely, I hope this year I'll be able, or I'll get the opportunity to talk about it a bit more everywhere, also in different continents. And hopefully people will like the message and will try to focus more on facilitation and give it a bit more value. Acknowledge it a bit more.
Cool. All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the conversation.
You're welcome.
I enjoyed it.
It was nice.
Yeah, I learned new things again. I didn't I mean, I still have a few things around, your Bruce Lee movements and stuff like that. But I think people should just read that book because
Yeah.
it's really worth reading it. And you have to read the last chapter because otherwise you're missing a big part. So that's good to know. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I wish you a lot of happiness and luck, and I'm giving you a heart hug.
I'm giving you a heart hug back right now.
All right.
It feels great.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Arne. Thanks.